Hi, hey, ho, hi, ho, hello, hey, go, yeah, on the target. Oh, here we go. It is 6 o'clock in the morning. Woo! Is Loki the true founder of the TVA? Is Loki now the most powerful entity in the universe? Will we see the return of a fully powered set of Infinity Stones? And could Loki take the place of Manifold in Time Runs Out, with Mobius taking the Black Swan role when he appears in Deadpool 3? Question mark. And finally, what's in store for episode 6 and beyond? Well, I've got 3 possible directions this could go, so stick around and let me know which you'd rank from most to least likely. God damn, that's terrible coffee. In the penultimate episode of Loki Season 2, we leave off with Loki in an interesting place. So far, nothing has been spaghettified, at least not the structures around him, but nobody's around, which leads me to believe that the explosion, as I theorized before, has actually pruned everyone. I'm not sure why Loki appears to have avoided it. Perhaps this is the overall plan that I'm about to get into, but this leads directly into my overall theory for this season's ultimate reveal that Loki is the real He Who Remains. Here's why. Throughout the season, there's plenty of talk about Ouroboros and how it's all a cycle, snake eating its own tail. We all assumed that the cycle up until now was what we saw with the end of season 1 and He Who Remains having established a hard line where everything ends. We really, at the time, had no reason not to believe the guy, that this was crossing the threshold, as he said. My guess, though, is that he was lying. In the mid-season trailer, we can see "you won't believe what happens next" or something similar to that, but the words linger on the word lie. So there's still a lie to be confronted here, I believe. There are some subtle hints, but overall, I believe that we are still walking down that same path that He Who Remains paved all that time ago. But the twist to that is that He Who Remains is actually Loki. My guess is that the team building that we're seeing throughout this episode is not just meant to provide spaghettification fodder for when things go boobies up. It's more meant to be an inspiration for Loki to accept that the TVA needs to exist and these people need to be in the TVA as a result from the previous parts of the cycle. I'm assuming also that the fact that Obi's house is located in a branched timeline might also be a key element here. The room that he and Loki are having a conversation in looks suspiciously exactly like the RNA department in the TVA. What is RNA but the building blocks of life in the most simplest terms I can think of? What department is the heart of the TVA, as described by Mobius? That would be RNA. I'm guessing it was built in this branched timeline after everything had been spaghettified, when nothing is left other than this building. The only reason the building remains is because, I guess, for whatever reason, Loki needs the building to remain. He seems to be able to shape reality by time slipping anywhere and any time, so he might be powerful enough to create this sort of null zone and protect this one room that they will then use to build the TVA out of. The hilarious thing about this is that this means that the TVA was founded in, I believe, Pasadena, California in 1994, which is hilarious. I'll even go so far as to propose that Loki goes so far as to recruit Renslayer and an earlier version of Victor Timely to stand in as the He Who Remains that Loki will eventually encounter. He will end up being the mask for the real force behind the TVA, and then the creator of his own mask, the Timekeepers. This is actually mind-blowingly similar to a philosophy that the son always wants to outpace the father. It's really cool telling of that specific principle. I'm guessing that Sylvie is also involved, and that's how we get the mind-wiping technique that matches the protocol that He Who Remains uses when he wants to reset everything. When he wants to reset everybody's memories, and then when he wanted to create the Timekeepers. As an aside, they also do this really annoying continuation with the question of who wrote the TVA guidebook, which is fine. fine, but I want to get out of the paradox stuff and I want to get into more definitive answers. That's just my own little bugaboo. One final note on this episode is something that I said before, that this version of the timeline doesn't seem to be spaghettifying after Loki has gained control over his time-slipping powers. So that's why I think that it could be used as like a sort of little pocket dimension, because it somehow got glitched and remains now that Loki has seemed to have stabilized it. That's all. Just wanted to add that on to the end. So as we also see in the final moments, Loki goes back to the emergency situation that we see from episode 4. But either way, let's get to the actual fun part. Here are 3 ways that we could go forward from here. It's not specifically 3, it's just all the things that I could think of when I was watching this episode that might be sort of the answer or the explanation or the exposition that we need at the end of the season. So just to set this up, in keeping with my theory from a previous video, I think everything's going to fall apart, and this black hole container with the multiverse inside it is going to pop, and at the end of everything, Loki is going to end up in this season's version of the Citadel at the end of time. Now, just a quick note on the reason why I think this. In TV, there is sort of this unspoken rule where you have to go bigger and better or subvert the expectations. And this entire season has been about subverting our expectations, so I feel like the payoff is probably going to just be a big reveal. If it's going to be a reveal, it has to be bigger and better in scale, which this is the reason why season 2s everywhere always do worse than season 1s. But it has to be bigger and better than the first season. So with that in mind, one trippy place Loki could end up is in the Library of Worlds. The library is an incomprehensibly huge repository that's located outside of the known multiverse. It's a nexus that allows whoever inhabits it to travel the multiverse as they desire. And it was created by the Beyonders, who will kind of be explained through these 3 theories. They are kind of a through line through it all, so I hope that at some point they're included. And this is the place where, and this is the only real way that it could tie to Secret Wars, unfortunately. And even then, it's still a reach. But this is the place where the Black Swans and their leader carried out their plans to kill the molecule men of the multiverse. In order for this to work, you would have to have an equivalent of the molecule men, which I've already speculated that Kang probably is. You'd have to have an equivalent of the Black Swan, which Mobius might end up being. And you'd have to have a concept of the Beyonders, which we don't know yet. We haven't even talked about the first firmament. We haven't talked about the first cosmos. We don't know about the Celestials and the aspirants. There's a lot that needs to be explained in order for any of that to work. So I think, personally, that this is the least likely of the 3. Also, the appearance of an infinite library might remind people a little too closely of the movie Interstellar. And either that could be a good thing because it would help people associate something that they can understand with a concept that's very hard to understand, and it would be the easiest one to adopt of the other 2. Another place he could end up would be the Beyond. It's almost the same as the Citadel, but there's just no Citadel. There's no meteor. It's more of an empty void. It's sort of the next level up from the end of time, as it is also located outside of time and space. Now, this is actually the home of the Beyonders, who tie in heavily to both the Library of Worlds, but more into this place because this is where they live. The Beyonders have a huge role in Secret Wars, and they don't exist in the MCU, but I think we'll get an analog for them to sort of explain how things end up in the Battle World scenario. The big deal about this one is that the Beyond would explain the multiverse cycle, which is a larger scale cycle than the sacred timeline, but it is very similar in style. This could also introduce the idea of the first cosmos, which exploded to form the first multiverse. There was a war between the Celestials and aspirants, which, no need to explain all that, the result of which was the explosion of the first cosmos into the second cosmos, which was known as the first multiverse. I know it's complicated. There's about 100 years worth of knowledge that fits into this that have to get explained, which is why I think they're doing things in a much lighter form, which is understandable. The Celestials created some of these dudes called the Omegas, who helped them manage things around the shop. They were resentful of their creators, however, after they moved on to the third cosmos, leaving the Omegas behind in the Beyond, where they would then become known as the Beyonders. Then their resentment, their hatred for their creators is what leads them on a crusade to destroy the multiverse. This could be a potential twist of this season, that there's a bigger cycle that nobody knew about and that not even the Kangs knew about, this whole multiverse cycle. This would also give us the opportunity to bring back Thanos in order to do his Thanos contingency, or the thing where he becomes the multiverse. This would give us a chance to see a Beyonder or the young Beyonder, whatever. There's a lot of places that this could lead from here, why I think it's a pretty good way to go. The third place Loki could end up is probably the least likely, and if anything, if either of the other two solutions were taken, this actually could just be written in to sort of connect into that, okay? So bear with me here. This third destination would be the God Quarry. It would take some doing to explain, but this, not only my favorite solution, but this is also a place outside the multiverse that is actually accessed by the Infinity Stones. All right, since the talk of magic dampeners being lifted, there have been theories surrounding the Infinity Stones that they could be used again. This could be it. During the final battle, at some point, there could be some crazy moment where somebody throws a box at Loki, and it could just happen to contain a bunch of Infinity Stones, and all their powers combined. Maybe he falls through a new kind of portal. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. I don't care how he gets there. It would just be really cool if he gets there. If he ends up in the God Quarry, it would really tie together his history with Thor and his dad. He could even see dead versions of them. It would allow him to navigate a lot of his more personal journey stuff, and he would be able to miss his bro some more, and it would be really cool. The only reason I don't think it would happen is because the God Quarry looks and sounds really similar to the Void at the End of Time. So if they had to decide between these three possibilities, then they could, again, as I said, just fold this one in and have the endpoint be the Void at the End of Time. Easy peasy. And then just choose one of the other two to go with. So that's it. That's it's a quick video. It's a quick breakdown. It was a great episode. It was something that didn't exactly blow my mind, but got close. And if any of these ideas sounded fun to you, and if you have any of your own, please feel free to share with me in the comments. Stay tuned for the Loki 6 episode, probably next week. I can only assume, since that's when the episode comes out. Anyway, that's about all I got for you.